What if the difference between a blood sugar spike and a stable afternoon was already sitting in your spice cabinet? I'm Dr. Richard, and in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you one simple addition to your daily tea that's backed by real research. Not hype, not miracle claims, just solid science on how it may help support healthier blood sugar levels. Stick around, because I'll also tell you exactly how much to use, when to drink it, and the one mistake most people make that cancels out the benefit entirely. Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Dr. Richard. For over 2 decades, I've worked with patients managing everything from prediabetes to full type 2 diabetes. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Small, consistent habits almost always beat drastic, unsustainable changes. Today's video is about one of those small habits. It's cheap, it's natural, and there's a good chance it's already in your kitchen, so let's get into it. Section 1, the problem. Before we talk about the solution, let's talk about the problem. Because understanding why this works will help you actually stick with it. When you eat, especially foods with refined carbohydrates or added sugar, your blood glucose rises. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin, which helps shuttle that glucose into your cells for energy. In a healthy system, this process is smooth. Glucose goes up, insulin responds, glucose comes back down. But for a lot of people, whether due to insulin resistance, genetics, stress, poor sleep, or diet, that curve doesn't stay smooth. Instead, you get a sharp spike followed by a sharp crash. And that crash is often what triggers the fatigue, the brain fog, and honestly, the cravings that send you right back to the pantry an hour later. Over months and years, repeated spikes like this can contribute to insulin resistance, weight gain around the midsection, and eventually, for some people, a prediabetes or type 2 diabetes diagnosis. Now, I want to be clear about something up front. No herb, spice, or tea is going to reverse diabetes or replace medication. If you're on blood sugar medication, please don't stop it because of anything in this video. What I'm about to share is a supportive habit, something that may help take the edge off those spikes when it's combined with a reasonable diet and lifestyle. Think of it as one tool in the toolbox, not a magic wand. With that said, let's talk about the ingredient. The ingredient I'm talking about is something you've probably had 100 times without thinking twice about it. Cinnamon. I know, it sounds almost too simple. But stay with me, because the research behind it is more interesting than you'd expect. Section 2. The science. Cinnamon has been studied for its effects on blood sugar for decades now, and while it's not a cure-all, the evidence for a modest benefit is genuinely there. Here's what we know. Cinnamon contains compounds, particularly something called cinnamaldehyde, that appear to influence how your cells respond to insulin. Some research suggests cinnamon may improve insulin sensitivity, meaning your body needs less insulin to move glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells. Other studies point to cinnamon slowing the rate at which the stomach empties after a meal, which can blunt how quickly glucose enters your bloodstream in the first place. A number of clinical trials and meta-analyses, reviews that pool data from multiple studies, have found that cinnamon supplementation is associated with modest reductions in fasting blood glucose, and in some cases, improvements in markers like HbA1c, which reflects your average blood sugar over about 3 months. Now, I want to be honest with you, because that's what I'd want if I were watching this. The research isn't perfectly consistent. Some studies show a meaningful effect. Others show a smaller one, and the size of the benefit seems to depend on the type of cinnamon used, the dose, and the population being studied. This is not the kind of effect that's going to replace insulin therapy or take the place of metformin. But for people looking for small, evidence-supported ways to support their blood sugar alongside a healthy diet, it's one of the more promising food-based options we have. One important detail. Not all cinnamon is created equal. There are 2 main types you'll find in stores. The first is cassia cinnamon. This is the cheaper, more common variety. It's what you'll typically find in a standard grocery store spice jar. Cassia contains higher levels of a compound called coumarin, which in large amounts can be hard on the liver. The second is Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes called true cinnamon. It's a bit more expensive, has a milder flavor, and contains much lower levels of coumarin, making it the safer choice if you're planning to use cinnamon regularly, especially in higher amounts. If you're just sprinkling a little cinnamon on your oatmeal once a week, the difference probably doesn't matter much. But if you're adding it to your tea daily, which is what we're talking about today, I'd lean towards Ceylon dot. So now that you understand the why, let's talk about the how, because the way you prepare this matters more than people realize. Section 3. How to use it. Here's the simple version. Take your normal cup of tea. Green tea and black tea both work well, and green tea in particular has its own research behind it for metabolic health. And add about half a teaspoon of ground Ceylon cinnamon, or one small cinnamon stick if you're steeping it. Let it steep for at least 5 minutes. This matters, because the beneficial compounds in cinnamon need time to actually infuse into the water. A quick 10-second stir isn't going to do much. Timing also matters. In my experience with patients, the most useful time to have this is about 15 to 20 minutes before a meal, particularly a meal you know is going to be higher in carbohydrates. The idea is that the cinnamon has a chance to interact with your digestive system before the glucose from your meal shows up. Now here's the mistake I mentioned at the beginning, the one that quietly cancels out the benefit, loading your tea with sugar or honey. I see this constantly. People add cinnamon for blood sugar support, and then they stir in 2 teaspoons of sugar, completely undoing the point. If you need sweetness, a small amount of a natural, low-glycemic sweetener, or simply less sweetener over time as your palate adjusts, is going to serve you far better. 1 cup a day is a reasonable starting point. Some of my patients do it once with breakfast. Others prefer it before their largest meal of the day, whichever meal that happens to be. There's no strict rule here. The consistency matters more than the exact timing. Section 4. Who should be careful now? A few important notes, because I'd rather you hear this from me than find out the hard way. If you have liver conditions, cinnamon, especially the cassia variety, should be used with caution due to that coumarin content I mentioned earlier. If you're pregnant, it's worth checking with your OB before adding concentrated cinnamon to your routine, simply because the research in pregnancy specifically is limited. And if you're on blood sugar medication, whether that's metformin, insulin, or something else, please talk to your doctor before making this a daily habit. Cinnamon can have a mild blood sugar lowering effect, and in rare cases, combining that with medication could push your levels lower than intended. This is exactly the kind of thing your physician should know about, not because it's dangerous, but because good care means your whole team is on the same page. None of this is meant to scare you. For most healthy adults, a cup of cinnamon tea a day is very low risk. I just believe in giving you the full picture, not just the highlight reel. So let's zoom out for a second, because I don't want you to walk away from this video thinking cinnamon tea is some kind of silver bullet. Section 5. The bigger picture. In my career, the patients who've seen the biggest improvements in their blood sugar weren't the ones chasing a single supplement or a single trick. They were the ones who stacked small, sustainable habits on top of each other. Cinnamon tea before a carb-heavy meal? That's one small habit. A 10-minute walk after eating, which has surprisingly strong research behind it for blunting glucose spikes. That's another. Prioritizing protein and fiber earlier in a meal before the carbohydrates? Another. Getting consistent sleep since poor sleep is directly tied to insulin resistance? Another. None of these on their own are dramatic, but stacked together over months, they add up to something real. So think of what we talked about today not as the answer, but as one solid brick in a wall you're building. Closing, so to recap, Ceylon cinnamon, about half a teaspoon, steeped for at least 5 minutes in your tea, ideally 15 to 20 minutes before a carb-heavy meal, without loading it up with sugar. Simple, low cost, and backed by real, if modest, research. If you're currently managing prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, or any blood sugar concern, please treat this as a supportive habit to discuss with your doctor, not a replacement for the care you're already receiving. If this was helpful, I genuinely appreciate a like. It helps this video reach other people who could use it. Subscribe if you want more evidence-based, no-hype health content, and drop a comment letting me know if you try this. I read every single one. I'm Dr. Richard. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.